Well, thanks everybody for coming. We'll go around the table and do introductions. We have more students than we had last time, so this is wonderful. This is the idea behind this is that we can all learn from each other. There's no experts here, but I find that the more that people talk with each other, you get new ideas and it gets you thinking about things. So this is a very, yay, more waiting room. This is a very simple way for people to hopefully feel low stakes or like not a lot of stress to be able to talk about things. If you have nothing that you want to share, that's totally fine. If you just want to listen, if something comes to mind, that works too. But I think we'll go around the room, share our names, maybe what our interest level is in kinesiology or the classes that we're in right now. And then we'll kick it off with, I have something I can start with sharing for sports analytics, but then we can, whoever else wants to hop in, we certainly can. So Esther, do you want to go first?
Hi, my name is Esther. I'm a senior/junior here. I'm a public health major. And I noticed that like the public health major is under the kinesiology department. So I just want to learn more because most of my classes, when we're using like examples, it's kinesiology related. So the more I know, the easier it will be for me to understand. That's about it.
And you're a student athlete here.
Oh yes, I am, but I'm in a boot, so I'm on par right now.
What happened to you?
I had a stress fracture. Okay. Yeah.
Yay. Good. Thanks, Esther.
I'm a freshman. My name is Tristan, and I'm just trying to learn what I want to do in life.
Takes a while.
I don't know if I
Yeah, I have a cold, so that's what my voice sounds like. But I'm Tori, I'm a sophomore. I play softball here. Major sport communication, hoping to get my master's in sport management. My minor is sports psychology, so that kind of fits in with the kinesiology classes. And just here to learn, so yeah.
Well, I'm Dr. Davies or Dr. Garrett, whichever one you want to call me. I got married in April, so I'm kind of on that transition. I am the grad department chair currently. My expertise area is biomechanics. So I actually have a close connection with data analytics because that's all numbers and that's what biomechanics is all about.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ryan Hubbard. I am the program chair for Masters in Sport Management and the Masters in Coaching and Athletic Administration. And interest in analytics, well, I'll talk about it shortly, but I also help run the Twin Sports professional sports experience. And we just had the assistant director of player development, who is all data analytics, speak to us this week. Plus, I know we have interest in the future of adding and sports analytics in some way, shape, or form. So,
yep. Hi, I'm Denise Howard. I am the program chair for the online exercise science undergrad program and sport management programs. And I don't have an interest in sport analytics. I mean, I don't have experience in it, but I am interested in it's a booming topic. So I'm here to learn and absorb.
Yeah. Hey, I feel like this is like a date. And I'm Jen Myers. We should have the owl or the little camera. We should next time. And I am a professor here as well. My interest areas are sports psychology, but I think there's more and more data that is even going into kind of a soft science behind sports psychology. So I'm fascinated to know where sports analytics is going to take us in regards to athlete performance and how they cope with that emotionally and psychologically. So I'll turn it over to our online people if you feel okay introducing yourselves. So those of us around the table know who you are.
I kind of just joined a little later. Sorry, my computer was updating Zoom. What exactly are we saying here?
We are saying who we are, what our class level is in college if you're a student, and what your interests are in the industry, and then just intros for now, and then we'll open up for analytics chat.
Okay. So my name is Nicholas Thorson. I'm a senior student here at Concordia. I am studying exercise physiology, and I'm looking to go to grad school for physical therapy. Sport analytics is a lot having to do with optimizing movement and stuff, especially within baseball when I was in it a couple of years ago. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have on the intro to sport analytics for myself. So yeah.
Thanks, Nick.
I guess I can introduce myself. I'm Dr. Joe Ostrom. I'm a professor at Concordia in the doctorate program. And so I see Sonia is also in that on the chat. It's great to see you. Kind of along with Nick, I mean, I'm in exercise physiology. I love that type of data analysis for exercise prescription. But outside of that, I don't really use it too much from like the classical analytics side of things, but I do love following baseball, and that's all data analytics. So I'm definitely interested in this topic.
Hi, everybody. I'm Savannah. I'm in the doctorate program as well. I'm just here to learn from all of you, and my focus is in the senior population. I am currently a coordinator for a large retirement community, and I really believe that this is sort of a big trend and a big universal healthcare problem and awesome industry to work in. I've did a lot of stuff in post rehab and a lot of physical therapy training out in California. I lived out there for about 15 years, and I've been in personal training and commercial fitness stuff. So I'm just kind of moving along with the trends and trying to keep up with everything and what's happening, and looking to learn from all of you and what you have to offer and talk about. So thanks for having me.
Hi, guru, everybody. Good morning, and thank you so much for the invite to join. I'm so sorry that I missed last week, but I am so grateful that my schedule worked out to be here this week. My name is Sonia. I am a doctoral student of kinesiology, the exercise science track. I am a professor at my home university here of kinesiology in, the home university of SUNY Cortland in kinesiology. And I am classified as a spiritual kinesiologist. I am fairly heavily trained by, oh, I'm sorry, my bird wants apparently to say hello to everybody. I am heavily trained by Buddhist monks at the Nyamgyal Temple, where it is actually His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's home heritage site. And I own a yoga studio locally around here. So I am very, very interested mostly in yogic sciences, a little bit more on the esoteric side, and looking into Eastern practices and how they can be used for total wellness in a holistic sense. Vicky, gosh.
Sweet people, thanks. We have an awesome congregation here this morning. So thank you. So our topic for this month is sport and data analytics. Next month, the same roundtable will happen, and we are going to talk about the graduate school process. So we will hopefully have some of our professors here shining light on what it's like to get into a program, but then students who are considering graduate school, what kinds of things should they be thinking about as well? So that's November 17th or 18th or something like that. So mark your calendars for 4 weeks from today. That'll be our next roundtable. But for today, let's open it up. Ryan has notes. So are you willing to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll cast a wide net
Okay.
here. These are notes taken. So it's the second time. Individual's name is Josh Ruffin. He's assistant director of player development with the Twins, and he spoke to us this summer. He spoke to us again in the fall here. But I took more extensive notes first time I heard him because talk about the same thing. But anyways, one thing I found interesting is as we look at casting a wide net at analytics, he mentioned a couple things in terms of working with the front office with a sports team. It's modeling the player's performance to determine future value, and I say that he did work with the major league squad for a while. Now he's mostly with the minor league affiliates of the Twins, of which there's 3. And so he's stationed here, but he goes to the different cities where the teams are, and he helps model future value, determine future value, performance, things like that. So that's one of his major roles right now. Also determining accurate probabilities for differences in games for strategic purposes. So figuring out, a lot of different things. What pitch a pitcher might throw. If you follow baseball, or obviously I closely watch the Twins, but their infielders and outfielders in particular have cards based on analytics, and they'll shift to different parts of the field based upon the probability of a player hitting a ball in that particular direction. Also, again, this more in Dr. Carrott's wheelhouse, studying human anatomy and mechanics to optimize performance. So they look at how players move, so basically biomechanics, how players move, what efficiencies and inefficiencies they may have, Especially look at pitchers, where's their elbow at, right? And
Elbow's important,
you have
but there's a lot more
A
than
lot,
just the elbow.
Well, yeah.
You've got like arm slot, shoulder extension, flexion, elbow, yeah,
all that, yeah,
elbow torques.
torques and all the different pitches they throw. What does that look like? And they look at spin rate of pitches and where, they
Mhm.
vertical. This is
Connect
vertical.
it to injury rates, connect it to hitter performance. Yep.
So yeah, we can nerd out on that, obviously. Right?
Yeah.
And then
I could go on forever about pitchers, and everyone thinks the curveball is the problematic pitch, right? How many of you have heard that?
Yeah.
The curveball is the problematic pitch, but it's really not. If you look at the data. So
What's the data say?
it's going to be the slider. Yeah.
and then another one that's more, maybe not more in the data collection, but collecting and storing data efficiently and building accessible tools to help staff collect data and also find data quickly so you can pull up that information. And one thing I thought was really interesting, I think I took out my notes from the other day, was actually no, I didn't. But I think he mentioned working in analytics. Those that have a STEM background, they think you have to be like this math nerd. And I'm using his language there. You don't. He's like, we know a little bit more math than most people. It's like, it's not like we're doing this advanced math that no one's ever seen before. It's collecting and getting the right information and delivering it correctly. Because like if those people that are interested in sports analytics in particular, if the STEM background, science background is really going to be beneficial if that's an area you want to pivot to. And I found that was a really good insight. So people that are looking to, hey, I have a feel for that. How would I do? I'm not, you don't have to take you don't have to be like a math major to be a data analyst.
Yeah, I can actually talk
Yeah,
about that job option. So I had once upon a time applied to be a sports analyst at the Twins, actually. And so I got to the second round of the process. You might not know about sports jobs, but you don't just get an in-person interview at a big organization like that. You do your application, and then if you're doing, say, sports analyst position, they send you a quiz or a test to ask you more about your skills. And so for this particular sport analyst position, they wanted to know what kind of computer programming languages I could write in and understand. They wanted to know what kind of not data, but formats I could pull data from. So can I pull from a CSV? Can I pull from an Excel spreadsheet? Can I pull from some sort of document I've never seen before? So they wanted to see my programming skills. They wanted to see what kind of languages I could pull in from documents. And then they also wanted to see how skilled in communicating my research or my findings was, because you work with an athlete, you work with even a clinician. So like the athletic trainer, the sports medicine people, they wanted to be sure that I could take what I was finding and actually explain it in a way that was understandable to every entity involved. So they asked about my experience working with athletes, with coaches, with sports medicine staff and trainers to make sure that I could talk to everyone about what I was finding analytics wise. I didn't go on past that point, but that kind of gives you insight into even just the first step of getting kind of that data analytics job. So yeah. Personally, I did just a small data analytics research study with one of our grad students 2 years ago. So he was interested in seeing if the order of the pitchers actually influenced the win rate, the home visitor loss win rate, and innings pitched. So what we looked at was, in baseball, there is typically it's a starter, a relief pitcher, closer. That's typically what you have seen in terms of pitchers. But recently the Tampa Bay Rays have been doing what's called an opener, and then they put in a starter, then a relief and a closer. So what we wanted to see was whether the opener strategy was actually better than the starter pitcher strategy, the more traditional strategy. So we took all the data from just the American League side teams for the 2021 to 2022 season, which was really hard because we wanted to do it longer, but with COVID, the season wasn't completely full. So we took all this data and we did it by hand. You don't have to do it by hand, but we did it all by hand, and we would look and we had to decide what was determined as an opener versus a starter in terms of pitches and innings pitched. So what we would see is sometimes a starter went in and they only pitched an inning, but they would have like 10 hits. So then we didn't want to keep that pitcher in. That would not be an opener. That would still be a starter who kind of spiraled out of control. So we had to go in with our set definitions of what was a starter, what was an opener, but then you also, we didn't account for this, but we also saw the bullpen type pitching where they just put different pitchers in for every 2 innings. And so it's an entire bullpen going in to play this game. So you can see that it's not just a straight up, let's analyze the data easily. You got to come in with definitions. You got to come in with being ready for the things you didn't expect and the strategies you didn't expect. So that study, we found out that there wasn't really any benefit, but there was only 1 season and only about 3 teams currently consistently using the opener strategy. So that is my only real study on data analytics. Like Professor Huber said, as a biomechanist, that is my job to look at what people do movement wise. So I'm in the sports performance analytics side, as opposed to say ticketing sales or marketing or something. So there is that 2 different field of data analytics as well. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I don't really have a question or really a comment. It's just, I guess, a statement around when you brought up like the management, like the ticketing, sales, and things like that. You don't necessarily think about that as like data analytics, but I read something recently on, if you throw anybody a 10 to 20% off discount in their email, like they have something in their in their cart, and then you throw them that thing, they'll have like an 85 to 90% chance of buying it after they get that. So it's like you're using those types of data analytics to know your consumer and to maybe, grow your business in a better way as well. So it's not just like related to sport performance. It is in like the sport management world, or like you said, ticketing sales type of thing. So yeah, I just find it's really interesting. Like you want to get away from that.
There's a lot of applications there.
Yeah, tons of applications for it. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Something that I found fascinating, and I'm and Professor Howard and I are runners, so I don't know if all of you have known or read about the goal to break a 2-hour marathon. So it was very scientifically, so it's been done, but it hasn't been done certified. But they used all these analytics with Kipchoge. He was on a track. He had new people that came in and drafted him, his shoes, the tangents that he's running, like all of these factors needed to play in to figure out how he could break this 2-hour marathon. And I think previous to this, without the use of technology, it would have been probably a crapshoot, but we had just all these data, all this numbers. He knew his VO2 max, he knew his thresholds, all this stuff that they could calculate to go perfectly. And it did go perfectly with this marathon on the track. It was not a certified under 2 hours because obviously he had help, but just that's so fascinating to use all the technology at your fingertips to be able to conjure up a performance, really. So that was something that sticks out in my mind about the use of data to move the science forward.
So for the students, as we're talking about data and how they can be used, would you have any ideas in your field or your sport or your activities that you would use it?
Oh, definitely. I think I remember when we were talking about how people adhere to unhealthy or healthy behaviors. I feel like if you can use the data from what works and what doesn't, I feel like you get a better result. So I feel like you can use data as in, like, not just data analytics, but just data as a whole to determine like how effective something is. So I think across all things in public health, like trying to get people to eat healthier, what are the interventions that actually work? Looking at the data, this kind of thing.
Well, and with public health, it's really interesting because we see that like distance to certain health factors, like a grocery store, or is there a fast food restaurant on the corner by the school that they're living? So it's not even like necessarily what's being offered or eaten. It's where does this person live and how does that affect their nutrition choices? So I think Concordia is interesting because we have holiday, but we still have to cross the highway to get to our closest fast food place. So how do you think that influences on campus students here? So yeah, great.
Well, I feel like being a softball player, like data is like a huge thing, and like statistics, and even like there's just a lot of behind the scenes stuff, like you said, from like watching MLB games, like when they pull up, say if someone's up to bat, and they pull up like their history versus this pitcher, and they went 2 for 13 the last series, like all that plays a role. And sometimes based on that data, they may switch out the pitcher so they can get the person out. It just applies to like everything. So just interesting.
So you're a softball player. Softball pitchers, how much do they pitch?
Kind of depends. I mean, baseball, they have more, obviously, like you said, they have their bullpen, opener, release. We only have like 2 pitchers on the team right now, so it's like it's way more like, I guess, like stress on them. So they're
Do you think that if you looked at the data, you would figure out if that's worth it for the team, or would you lobby for more pitchers?
definitely lobby for more pitchers.
But the thing is, it's still not being done. So
Right,
yeah. So we need people like you who are like, I see what happens here. Let's pull the data, let's analyze it. And let's see maybe what this cutoff is. I had a grad student who proposed analyzing the pitching and then putting a pitch count on the pitcher. Say you can only pitch this many innings based on like the little league things. And she was like, how would that change the performance? Would they still be able to win games? Or would it impact the win-loss record? So yeah, softball, I think, gets a little bit of ignored because of baseball and how big baseball analytics are. But you guys definitely have lots of opportunity to figure out your game and figure out how to embrace the health of your sport.
If we're done there, I'd like to kind of backpack off of it. So for the first 2 years of my college experience, I played baseball at Gustavus Adolphus, and I was a pitcher in the center fielder there too. And even before we even stepped on the field, like during training, we would use our machine. It was we utilize a machine called Rapsodo. The Rapsodo would basically put out a number of projections, and that would basically tell us or dictate our team's value for each player and how we would utilize that player throughout the season. We would look at things such as like we were talking about earlier, like arm slot, just biomechanically, how can we optimize this player's movement to give us the best numbers, throwing wise, even hitting wise. We have angles, what angle is this guy's bat coming in through the zone, what result did this produce? So almost everything is a prime grade A example within baseball and softball to see data analytics. I feel like it's probably one of the biggest focal points of data analytics that we have in our time right now. But yeah, so using the Rapsodo is great. Yes.
Well, and it's interesting you say baseball too. I just read an article on football, and what they did was they just attached an accelerometer / GPS tracker on NFL players. And so this was much larger. They did it every single NFL player throughout the entire league. The paper was just on 3 players or 3 teams, but they tracked who had the most like distance tracked during the game, who was the fastest players, who had the greatest risk for injury based on those factors, their movement around the field. So not even like their performance per se, but just their movement was a way to track if there would be injury risk too. So I mean, it's not just looking at the kinematics and kinetics in the traditional sense of a lab, but can we see how much they're moving around the field?
And
I-
that utilized for like soccer, using like catapult systems, seeing like they're running like 4 miles in a match. It's like, okay, yeah, if this person, their recovery or their like fatigue response is kind of coming low, you only have so many substitutions that you can utilize in a game. So it's like, okay, if that person really does need to come out, you can find that from the data if they're wearing like those catapult systems during the game, and then like substitute them out with someone that hopefully will win the match for them by scoring a goal or, you know, stopping a goal or something like that. So yeah.
And I think what makes the differentiation between like a research study and true data analytics is almost the size of data being poured into something too. So you typically think of a research study and data as a small set of people, whereas data analytics is going to be pulling in a much larger set. Like I said, this NFL study had data on the entire NFL. They chose just 3 teams for being able to do like their initial pilot study. I would imagine that on the grander scale, the NFL research team is going to be putting this into a much larger scale study. So scale of the data is really what differentiates just using data and true data analytics. So like in public health, we have all this retrospective medical data that can be pulled from medical records that would be stored in a public database. Those actually are a thing. And so you could analyze a much larger population using the freely public available data. And that would be more along data analytics rather than a small scale research study.
But yeah, speaking of data in general, it reminds me a little bit, when we talk about public health, I've been kind of a generalist throughout, and I taught when I taught in Portland, Oregon, as a first year course, we looked at holistic wellness, and I had some stats from, there's an organization that was in Portland, they looked at where people live, distance from a grocery store, distance to what's the food around them, but also type 2 diabetes rates, cancer rates, rates of overweight and obesity. So all these factors, they could create a map of kind of the greater Portland metro area to show like, hey, if you live here, there's a higher incidence of XYZ. So that was really interesting. And they ended up shifting and doing something else, but it'd be really interesting. I'm sure there's other cities and areas that are pulling all that data, but it's really, and also too, I've lived a few places. I lived in Southern California, and we're looking at health and wellness. And I taught at Cal State LA, which is no one knows where it is, but it's on the edge of East LA, and I could give you all the freeways, but y'all might not know. But South LA is generally known as a food desert. There's not a lot of grocery stores. If they're not chains, they're mom and pops. And in my time there, I lived in Southern California from 2002 to 2011. They actually banned any more fast food restaurants from being built in South LA, because that was the predominant way to get food, was fast food. And I think we all know that fast food is not always the healthiest option. Not even fourth meal.
Second breakfast.
I think just one comment, and then I'll make one more comment actually. Just like being into baseball, especially the Twins, like, you know, their front office is really into data analytics, and there are times where you're like, you see something on the field and you're like, yeah, they're gonna go through the lineup the 3rd time, but the pitcher is just killing it. Like, don't take him out, Rocco. But the data analytics would say, you know, 3rd time through the order, it's going to be kind of a bloodbath for maybe this pitcher. And it's like, you know, from the fan side of things, you understand why that's happening a little bit, but you're also like, I mean, your eyes aren't deceiving you in this one time. Like, maybe outside of the analytics piece, like, you know, Pablo is just dealing today. I don't know, something like that. But the other then comment I wanted to make was, Denise, since you are kind of that marathon, ultra marathon runner piece, do you use a lot of data to inform your activities and what you're doing? I know you're over off to the side in like the comfier chairs. Just wanted to hear from you a little bit.
Probably not as much as you would think.
Personally,
Yeah,
right?
me personally, yeah. I think when you get to ultra running, I think marathon running, you use more of the analytics than you do when you get to ultra running, because every race is different, the terrain is different, the duration of it is different. So it's
For
honestly,
those
it's
of you
survival.
that don't know, she did 100-mile race last year
In Arizona.
and so that is what kind of running she does.
It's called survival. It's not about finishing time for me, it's getting to the finish.
But no, and I think it brings an interesting point because last time we talked about kind of wearable technology and kind of pros and cons, right? But I think
being attached to your wearable technology so much that you lose your own instincts. Yeah.
I think
House somewhere.
but I think that's a growing segment too. And whether it's in sports, you talk about public health, how many steps you take in a day, what's your heart rate, right? There's all these different things we can track and measure. There's interesting applications for both the sport and then the public general. I mean, the general public. I can talk. But I really think sport's really interesting because I know Joe mentioned kind of the catapult with soccer, and I know, I think speaking of the NBA in general, they can't, part of their contract is they can't wear any wearable technology for practice or games because that could be used against the players in contract negotiation. Like, so for example, they're practicing like, well, your heart rate's not in your target heart rate zone. You could probably go a little harder. You didn't cover as much ground today. So there's this flip side of, hey, you soccer, hey, you ran 4 miles. Well, you could have run 5. Maybe you didn't cover as much ground because your heart rate, you're sub-maximal.
Is interesting because the NFL study was not run by the NFL. It was ran by the NFL Players Association. So they were not technically giving the data to the NFL. They were giving it to the players themselves.
So there's that. Yeah, part of the future of it is with analytics with athletes in terms of
being able to use it for themselves too.
And that could be part of the contract negotiations too. And like, hey, say for example, I think most people know LeBron James, right? He's going into his 21st season. He's 38 years old. No one in the history of professional sport in general has had a peak career years like he has had. What is he doing?
Right.
That allows him to play at an elite level for basically 2 decades because no one's ever done it. So those type of things are interesting. I know he trains like a maniac and spends over $1 million a year on his body, which is a drop in the bucket for him when you think about how much he makes annually. But I also, again, my old school person too, that with football, I think of Emmitt Smith, who's the all-time leading rusher in the NFL. He had weekly massage. I mean, I think he had massages almost every day during the football season to help, soft tissue and things like that. And allowed him to be available to play. And your best ability is availability. They'll say that in pro sports and college sports too.
Well, it goes into the individuals on the Zoom call who want to do PT. I asked this to one person one day, and I actually heard it on a podcast, but what is the best combo of therapies for performance or something? There's not a good answer. So maybe it's based on the individual. So that is one thing that does throw a wrench into these larger data analytics studies for rehab or physical therapy, because a lot of that is going to depend on individual, which makes data analytics in health, physical health, a lot harder than a healthy population.
Right.
I mean, kind of.
I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying, and I had a question. I was wondering, like, how much of analytics do athletes actually use to impact their performance? And I feel like you kind of answered that, because if you look at another athlete's statistics and you're looking at what are they doing to get those kind of results, does that impact what you do? Because I'm a thrower, and a lot of people don't know what that is. I'm a track and field thrower, and if you watch the Olympics, the video will literally tell you the speed they're going, the angle they're going, how fast they're going, the foot placement, or where the foot placement is. All of that now that can tell you exactly, okay, when I'm training, I'm looking at where my foot placement is, where my wingspan is, where I'm placing the ball, those kind of things. So I feel like I use the analytics for my own personal investment too. But I'm like, how much of it does other athletes use?
Yeah, I think it depends on the athlete and the athlete level, because you heard that Denise doesn't use
Yeah, no.
you're wanting to use it. LeBron James uses it. And Nick said pitchers use it all the time. So like, I think it's going to depend on the coach. It's going to depend on the athlete, and it's going to depend on what data is available too. So I was a swimmer, and I watched my races every single time I did a race. I would pick out and nitpick every single thing I did wrong. But I'm a biomechanist by heart. Like, I knew in high school I was good at picking out movements, and so that was what I did. So yeah, and Dr. Ostrom wrote, and the goals of the athlete. I think it depends on that. So if your goal is just to go out and have fun, are you going to want to analyze everything? Are you going to want to know that? So yeah.
Nick, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm steering away from the conversation too much, but as far as like looking at training and being able to provide that same training or try to elicit the same training regimen to other athletes, at what point is there like a ceiling, would you say, probably, that data analytics would cut off for, as far as like genetic wise? Like, is he just genetically gifted? Is he able to do this because, you know, he has X, Y, and Z traits?
Dr. Ostrom probably can talk about it a little more. He wrote Usain Bolt, but when what's your name again? Esther was talking about watching these athletes and trying to focus on her placement. The first thing that popped into my mind is, how similarly built are you to that athlete? So it really does, genetics does play a little bit, because you're not going to be able to use something that Dr. Hubbard goes out and throws, because he's, how tall are you?
6'3".
6'3". How tall are you?
I'm 5'9".
5'9". So his foot placement and his ankle is going to be really different than your foot placement and your angle. And that is just based on sheer size. Well, and he's a lefty. Are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah, exactly. So genetics is going to play into things, because you're not going to be able to imitate. He's not going to be able to imitate LeBron James. And I definitely can't go run like Usain Bolt. So so he's from the Jordan era. I bet you could imitate Shaq a little. Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, it is going to depend on genetics. And I think it's not as much like genetics is going to be a cutoff. It is going to be, Dr. Ostrom, I say it's going to be, can we incorporate the physiology that is more genetics based along with the performance measures that we are doing on the outside of the body?
Yeah, 100%. And Nick, you bring up a really good point. Like, as a parent, I'm a parent of 4 kids. There's like this trend for you to get your kids into the things that they're going to succeed in. And a lot of the data just in general to make it individualized for the clients is going to be really beneficial to then help make their exercise prescription tailored to them. You know, having parents do like muscle biopsies on their kids to see, like, do you have more type 1 versus type 2A versus type 2X? Like, I actually am kind of afraid of that day. It is probably going to be coming down the pipeline soon, where it's like, yeah, we can get like genetic data on kids and be like, you're going to do this, or you would be a great athlete for like endurance activities because you have a higher percentage of type 1 fibers than type 2A or type 2X, you know? So like, there's a lot of that innate piece that's going to be present in the individual. But then there are things that you can't necessarily teach or control, or things like that. Like, some of my kids, so competitive, so driven, like they're going to just go for it. While others are like, I don't really care about that. So there's like a psychological, a physiological, training, data, all of that's going to be kind of mashed together to get the best out of an athlete or really out of any situation. And so, yeah, you're right that everything's going to be individualized, but you can get to a point where you've trialed and errored enough to know that like this type of training is going to be the best for this client to get to them to this goal. And that's kind of what's fun about science is it's always trial and error, and you just collect as much data as you possibly can and then try and like move through the process to get people to where they need to be. And it takes a lot of time, right? There's like nutritional sides, there's like training pieces that would be like exercise sides, physiological, psychological, all of that kind of play into this. And so the best way to go about it is just changing one thing, seeing how it impacts the person, and then kind of change the next thing, see how it impacts the person, and kind of go in that stepwise progression so that you're not changing all the things at one time and then seeing, I don't know if anything's actually worked or not because we haven't controlled for anything. So that's kind of a tangent onto like research methodology and how to set that up. But yeah, in my philosophy, everybody can improve. It's just trying to find that tinkering to get them to improve is going to maybe be a little bit of a challenge. So yeah.
Good point.
Esther's not going to go in and change her throw angle and her feet at the same time, are you? No.
There's one slight change that can change the entire aspect of the throw.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's just comparing like your physical like capacity, like what your height, your weight, similar to someone else who's as similar as you.
Yeah.
That way you can learn from that instead of trying to imitate someone completely different. Then it's like, okay, this is not working. So, like just for example, as a woman throwing, I would focus more on the women just because the men automatically they already have more upper body strength. So as a woman now, I have to try 10 times harder to have that kind of strength as a male. So comparing the data of like someone who's similar to you is more effective. So I agree, definitely.
Especially with how you would have to use your hips
Mhm.
because you're going to get more hip
Right.
related speed and motion.
Because these hips don't lie.
Any other comments or thoughts from people? This has been wonderful. We went a lot of different angles with this. It's awesome.